Clara's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she sawed through the first rope. The Apache girl dropped into her arms, still warm, still breathing. 6 more ropes, 6 more girls, all hanging from the same cottonwood tree where they'd hanged her husband 3 days ago. "Please," Clara whispered. "Please don't die on me." Behind her, hoofbeats echoed across the desert floor. Brackett's men were coming back, and Clara McAllister, a 43-year-old widow with nothing left to lose, made a choice that would turn all of Arizona against her. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to my channel and stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Clara counted 6 heartbeats before she cut the second rope. The girl fell hard, too hard. Clara caught her by the shoulders, lowering her onto the sand beside the first one. Both were breathing. Shallow. Weak. But breathing. "Hold on," Clara said. "I ain't letting you go. Not today." The third rope was thicker. Her knife slipped twice before the blade bit through. This girl was older than the others, maybe 22. A deep gash ran across her forehead. Dried blood crusted in her black hair. Clara worked faster. 4th rope, 5th, 6th. 6 Apache girls laid out in a row beneath the same cottonwood tree. The same tree where they'd strung up her husband Samuel McAllister 3 days ago. The same tree where she'd found him swinging in the morning light, his eyes still open, staring at nothing. Clara's throat tightened. She shook her head. Not now. Grief could wait. These girls couldn't. The oldest one stirred first. Her eyes snapped open, dark, fierce, and burning with something that looked like hatred. Her hand shot out, grabbing Clara's wrist with surprising strength. "Who are you?" The words came out in broken English, rough as desert stone. "My name's Clara. I cut you down." The girl's grip didn't loosen. "Why?" Clara looked at the tree, at the ropes still swaying in the wind, at the shallow graves she'd dug for Samuel just 2 days past. "Because I know what it's like," she said quietly, "to be left hanging by the men in this territory." Something shifted in the Apache girl's eyes. Not trust, not yet. But the hatred dimmed just a fraction. "I am Winona," she said, "daughter of Chief Running Bear. They killed my father. They killed my mother. They killed—" Her voice cracked. She stopped. Clara nodded slowly. "I know, honey. I know." The other girls began to wake. One by one, they sat up, coughing, gasping hands, clutching at their bruised throats. The youngest couldn't have been more than 16. She crawled toward Winona and pressed her face into her sister's shoulder, trembling. "Kimmy," Winona said softly, stroking the girl's hair. "We are alive. We are still alive." Clara stepped back, giving them space. She knew that kind of grief, the kind that needed room to breathe. She'd felt it herself, kneeling in the dirt beside Samuel's body, screaming until her voice gave out. But there wasn't time for grief. Not here. Not now. "We need to move," Clara said. "Those men, they'll be coming back." Winona's head snapped up. "You know Brackett's men." The name hit Clara like a fist to the chest. Brackett. Silas Brackett. The man who owned half of Arizona. The man who'd bought the sheriff, the judge, and every lawman within 100 miles. The man who'd ordered her husband hanged for refusing to sell their ranch. "I know him," Clara said. Her voice came out flat. Dead. "He killed my husband." Winona stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, she released Clara's wrist. "Brackett killed our people too," Winona said. "Our whole village. 53 men, women, and children, burned alive in one night." Clara's stomach turned. She'd heard rumors, whispers in town about a massacre out in the Canyonlands, but she'd never believed them. Couldn't believe them. Now looking at these 6 girls with rope burns on their necks and death in their eyes, she believed every word. "How'd you survive?" Clara asked. Winona's jaw tightened. "We hid. In a crack in the canyon wall. We heard our mother screaming. We heard our father begging them to spare the children." She paused. They did not spare the children. The youngest girl, Kimmy, let out a small, wounded sound. "Brackett wanted something from us," Winona continued. "A treaty document. The original. Signed by your government and our chief. It proves this land belongs to our people. If that document surfaces, Brackett loses everything." Clara understood immediately. So he's trying to destroy it. He's trying to find it first. He thinks we know where our father hid it. That's why he hung us. He wanted us to talk. "Did you?" Winona's eyes went cold. "We would rather die." Clara looked at the 6 of them, battered, bruised, barely alive. And yet none of them were crying. None of them were begging to be saved. They sat in the sand like warriors waiting for the next battle. Something stirred in Clara's chest. Something she hadn't felt since the day they'd put Samuel in the ground. Hope. "All right," Clara said. "Here's what's gonna happen. I've got a ranch about 3 miles east. It ain't much, but it's got walls and a roof and enough rifles to hold off an army. We get you there, get you fed, get you rested, then we figure out what to do about Brackett." Winona shook her head. "We don't need rest. We need revenge." "Revenge ain't gonna do you much good if you're dead. We are already dead." Winona touched the rope burn on her neck. "Brackett made sure of that. The only question now is how many of his men we take with us." Clara stared at her. This girl, this young woman, had just survived a hanging. She'd lost her parents, her village, her entire world. And here she was talking about war like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Maybe it was. "Listen to me," Clara said, kneeling down so she was eye level with Winona. "I lost my husband 3 days ago. Same men. Same tree. I know what you're feeling right now. I know that fire burning in your chest telling you to ride out and kill every last one of them." Winona didn't blink. "Then you understand. I understand that if you go after Brackett half dead and outnumbered, you'll be hanging from that tree again by sundown. And this time, I won't be here to cut you down." The words hung in the air. Winona's sisters looked at her waiting. The second oldest, a woman with a long scar down her cheek, spoke something in their language. Winona answered sharply. The scarred woman shook her head and spoke again, slower this time. Finally, Winona turned back to Clara. "My sister Dakota says you speak truth. She says we should go with you, for now." "Smart woman." "She is. She also says if you betray us, she will cut out your heart while you watch." Clara almost smiled. Fair enough. She helped them to their feet one by one. The youngest, Kimmy, couldn't walk on her own. Clara lifted her onto her back, the girl's arms wrapped around her neck like a child's. "This way," Clara said. "Stay low, stay quiet, and if you see riders coming, you run. Don't wait for me, just run." They moved through the desert, 6 Apache girls and 1 white widow, their footprints mixing together in the sand. Clara's horse was tied up about a 1/4 mile out. She'd hidden it behind a ridge before approaching the tree, not knowing what she'd find there. She hadn't expected this. Any of this. 3 days ago, she'd been a rancher's wife. Simple life. Quiet life. Samuel handled the cattle. She handled the books. They'd been married for 22 years, and in all that time, she'd never fired a gun at anything but coyotes. Then, Brackett's men came. They'd offered Samuel a price for the land a fraction of what it was worth. When he refused, they burned the barn. When he still refused, they shot the cattle. And when he rode into town to file a complaint with the sheriff, Clara stopped walking. Her chest hurt. Every time she thought about it, her chest hurt. "Ma'am?" She looked up. Winona was watching her, those dark eyes, seeing more than Clara wanted to show. "I'm fine," Clara said. "Keep moving." They reached the horse, a gray mare named Bessie, old but reliable. Clara helped Kimi onto the saddle, then turned to the others. "The rest of us walk. It ain't far." Dakota, the scarred woman, spoke up. "There were horses at the tree, Brackett's men left them. I know, I let them go. Why? Because if Brackett's men come back and find their horses gone, they'll know someone was there. They'll start looking. This way they might think the horses just wandered off. Dakota considered this. Then she nodded once, a small gesture, but it carried weight. They walked. The sun beat down on them, merciless and white. Clara's canteen was half empty, but she passed it to the girls without hesitation. They drank sparingly, each one, taking only what she needed before passing it on. Discipline. Even now, even half dead. Clara had never seen anything like it. "Your husband," Winona said suddenly. "He was a good man." The question caught Clara off guard. "Yeah, he was." "How do you know?" "What do you mean?" Winona kept her eyes forward, watching the horizon. Many white men seem good at first. They smile. They offer help. Then they take everything and call it progress. Clara thought about Samuel. About the way he'd treated the Apache traders who passed through their land always fair, always honest. About the way he'd argued with the other ranchers who wanted to drive the tribes out. Samuel believed this land was big enough for everyone, Clara said. He used to say that borders were just lines men drew to make themselves feel important. He sounds foolish. Maybe, but he was my kind of fool. Winona was quiet for a moment. Then, "I am sorry he is dead." Coming from her, those words meant something. Clara knew it. "I'm sorry about your people too," Clara said. "I wish I'd known. I wish I could have done something." "You couldn't have. Brackett owns this territory. Everyone is afraid of him, even your lawmen." "Not all of them," Clara said. "There's one man, a deputy over in Copper Springs, Thomas Callahan. He's been trying to build a case against Brackett for years. Can't get anyone to testify. Because the witnesses keep dying." "Yeah." Winona made a sound that might have been a laugh if there'd been any humor in it. "Then perhaps this Deputy Callahan needs witnesses who are already supposed to be dead." Clara stopped walking. She turned to look at Winona. Really look at her. At the rope burns on her neck. At the fire still burning in her eyes. "You want to testify against Brackett?" "I want to destroy him. If testimony is a weapon, I will use it. If guns are a weapon, I will use those too, whatever it takes. Brackett will come after you. He'll send everything he's got. Let him." Winona touched her scarred throat again. "I've already felt his rope around my neck. I'm not afraid of him anymore." Clara made a decision then and there. She didn't know if it was the right one. Didn't know if it would get her killed. Didn't know if Samuel would approve. But something in her gut told her this was the path she was meant to walk. "All right," Clara said. "When we get to the ranch, I'll send word to Callahan. We'll see if he's brave enough to ride out here. And if he isn't..." Clara pulled back her jacket, revealing the revolver at her hip. Samuel's revolver, the one she'd taken from his body. "Then we do it ourselves." For the first time since Clara had cut her down, Winona smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf, baring its teeth. "I think," Winona said, "that you and I are going to be good friends, Clara McAllister." They walked on. The ranch appeared on the horizon just as the sun began to sink, a small homestead with a 2-room cabin, a rebuilt barn, and a fence that needed mending. It wasn't much, but it was defensible. And right now, that was all that mattered. Clara led them inside. The cabin was simple, a main room with a fireplace and kitchen, a bedroom in the back. Clara had slept on the floor since Samuel died. Couldn't bring herself to lie in that bed alone. "There's water in the barrel," she said. "Clean cloth in the chest by the window. Get those wounds dressed. I'll see about food." The girls moved efficiently, helping each other. Dakota cleaned Kimmy's wounds, while Winona tended to the others. They didn't speak much, just quiet words in their own language, soft as prayer. Clara stepped out onto the porch. The desert stretched before her, empty and vast. Somewhere out there, Brackett's men were probably discovering that their prisoners had escaped. Somewhere out there, hell was getting ready to ride in her direction. She should have been afraid. But standing there with Samuel's gun on her hip and 6 warrior women in her home, Clara McAllister felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Ready. She heard footsteps behind her. Winona came to stand beside her, looking out at the same empty horizon. "You're thinking about him," Winona said. "Your husband. Always. Does the pain fade?" Clara considered the question. "Not yet. Maybe it never does. But it changes. Becomes something else." "What?" Clara turned to look at her. "Purpose." Winona nodded slowly. "Yes, I understand this." They stood together in silence, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. 2 women from different worlds, bound by the same loss, the same rage, the same desperate need to make things right. "Clara," Winona said finally, "there is something I must tell you. About the treaty document." "I'm listening." "Brackett believes we know where it is hidden. He tortured us for days. He hanged us from that tree, but we told him nothing. Because you didn't know." Winona's eyes met hers. "Because we do know." Clara's heart stopped. "My father told me before he died, whispered it in my ear as the flames took our village. He made me swear to protect it with my life." "Where is it?" Winona turned to face her fully. "It is buried beneath the ruins of the old mission, the one your people abandoned 20 years ago, 3 miles north of Copper Springs." Clara's mind raced. The old mission, she knew the place. Everyone did. It had been built by Spanish monks centuries ago, then abandoned when the territory changed hands. Now it was just crumbling walls and broken bells. If Brackett finds that document, he will destroy it, and everything our people sacrificed will mean nothing. The land will be his, legally, permanently. We can't let that happen. No. Winona's voice hardened. We can't. Clara looked back at the cabin, at the 5 other girls inside bandaging their wounds, preparing for whatever came next. How many men does Brackett have? At least 40, maybe more. And we've got 7. Yes. Clara laughed a sharp, bitter sound. Those are terrible odds. They are. So what do we do? Winona smiled that wolf's smile again. We don't fight 40 men, Clara. We fight the one man who controls them. Cut off the head and the body dies. You want to go after Brackett directly? I want to take everything from him. His money, his power, his men, and then when he has nothing left. Winona touched her neck. I want him to feel the rope. Clara should have been horrified, should have argued for mercy, for justice, for the law, but she thought about Samuel, about his eyes still open staring at nothing, about the way he'd trusted the law to protect him and how the law had let him swing. All right, Clara said. Tell me what you need. Winona leaned closer. First, we need your deputy Callahan, a lawman willing to fight. Second, we need guns, enough to arm all of us. Third, she hesitated. What? We need to know who in your town can be trusted. Brackett has spies everywhere. If the wrong person learns we're alive, we're dead. Yes. Clara thought about the people in town. The shopkeeper who'd refused to sell her flour after Samuel died. The preacher who'd looked the other way when Brackett's men burned her barn. The women who'd crossed the street to avoid her, whispering behind their hands. There's only one person I trust, Clara said finally. Who? Old woman named Martha Sims, runs the boarding house in town. She was Samuel's aunt, and she hates Brackett more than anyone alive. Can she help us? She can get word to Callahan without anyone knowing, and she knows secrets about half the people in that town. If there's anyone who can tell us who's loyal and who's bought, it's her. Exactly. Winona nodded. Then tomorrow we go to her. But tonight, she looked back at the cabin. Tonight we rest. My sisters are weak. They need time. Take all the time you need. I'll keep watch. You need rest too, Clara. I've slept enough these past 3 days. Nothing but nightmares anyway. Winona studied her for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand on Clara's shoulder, a gesture that seemed almost foreign to her, as if physical comfort was a language she'd forgotten. Thank you, she said, for cutting us down, for bringing us here, for believing us when you had no reason to. Clara covered Winona's hand with her own. Samuel used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when everything's telling them to walk away. He was wise. He was stubborn, but yeah, wise too. Clara squeezed her hand gently. Get some rest, Winona. We've got a long fight ahead. Winona withdrew her hand and turned toward the cabin. At the door, she paused. Clara. Yeah. If we succeed, if we destroy Brackett and recover the treaty, my people will remember your name. You will be honored among us. I don't need honor. I know. Winona's voice softened. That is why you deserve it. She disappeared inside. Clara stood alone on the porch watching the stars emerge one by one. The desert wind carried the smell of sage and distant fire. Somewhere out there, Brackett's men were probably already searching. Let them come, she thought. She'd lost her husband, lost her quiet life, lost everything she'd spent 22 years building. But standing here now with 6 Apache warriors sleeping under her roof and a dead man's gun on her hip, Clara McAllister realized she'd found something too. A reason to keep breathing. A war worth fighting. And maybe, just maybe, a family worth dying for. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara hadn't slept. She'd spent the night on the porch, Samuel's revolver in her lap, watching the darkness for riders who never came. Now, as the first light crept over the mountains, she heard movement inside the cabin. Winona appeared in the doorway. The rope burns on her neck had turned a deep purple overnight. You didn't sleep, Winona said. Neither did you. I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fire. Winona stepped onto the porch, her bare feet silent on the wood. I smelled my father burning. Clara said nothing. Some pain didn't need words. Your town, Winona said. How far? 4 miles. We could make it by mid-morning if we push. Then we push. Clara stood, her joints stiff from the cold night. Your sisters, are they ready? They were born ready. Surviving is what we do. Inside, the other 5 girls were already awake. Dakota was sharpening the knife she'd found in Clara's kitchen. Kimmy sat in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at nothing. The others moved quietly, efficiently, like soldiers preparing for battle. Clara gathered what supplies she could. Dried meat, hard bread, 2 extra canteens, a second revolver she'd hidden under the floorboards after Samuel died. Can you shoot? She asked Winona. My father taught me when I was 7. By 10 I could hit a rabbit at 50 yards. Good. Clara handed her the second gun. Because before this is over, you're gonna need it. They left the ranch as the sun broke free of the horizon. Clara led them along the back trails paths Samuel had shown her years ago, routes that avoided the main roads. If Brackett had men watching the territory, they'd be watching the obvious approaches. Dakota walked beside Clara, her scarred face unreadable. This woman we go to see. Martha. You trust her. With my life. Why? Clara thought about Martha Sims. 73 years old. Sharp as a blade. Mean as a rattlesnake when she needed to be. She'd run that boarding house for 40 years, watching men come and go, keeping secrets that could destroy half the territory. Because Brackett killed her son, Clara said. 15 years ago. Made it look like an accident. Martha knows. She's been waiting for someone brave enough to help her prove it. Dakota nodded slowly. Revenge makes for reliable allies. It does. They walked in silence for a while. The trail wound through rocky outcrops and dry creek beds, offering plenty of cover. Clara kept her eyes on the horizon, watching for dust clouds that might signal approaching riders. Kimmy stumbled. Winona caught her before she hit the ground. "I'm sorry," Kimmy whispered. "I'm trying. Don't apologize." Winona's voice was fierce but gentle. "You survived a hanging. You're walking. That's more than most could do." "I keep seeing them," Kimmy said. "Mother, father, the children. I keep hearing—" "I know." Winona pulled her close. "I hear them too. But right now we need to keep moving. We can grieve when we're safe." "Will we ever be safe?" Winona didn't answer. Clara watched the exchange, her heart aching. Kimmy couldn't have been more than 16. At that age, Clara had been worried about what dress to wear to the church social. This girl had watched her entire family murdered. "There's a creek up ahead," Clara said. "We'll rest there, refill the canteens, then we push on." They reached the creek 15 minutes later. The water was clear and cold, running down from the mountains. The girls drank deeply, washing the dust from their faces. Clara knelt beside the water, filling her canteen. That's when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Distant, but getting closer. "Get down," she hissed. "Into the rocks. Now." The girls moved like shadows, disappearing into the crevices along the creek bed. Clara pressed herself against a boulder heart, pounding hand on her revolver. The hoofbeats grew louder. 2 horses, maybe 3. Coming from the east. Clara risked a glance over the boulder. 3 riders. Dusty clothes. Rifles slung across their backs. One of them wore a red bandana around his neck. She recognized it immediately. Brackett's men used those bandanas to identify each other. "Spread out," one of them called. "They said she went this direction. Check the creek." Clara's blood turned to ice. They were looking for her. One of the riders dismounted, walking toward the water. He was maybe 20 feet away. 15. 10. Clara held her breath. The man stopped at the creek's edge. He looked left, then right. His eyes passed directly over the boulder where Clara was hiding. "Nothing here," he called back. "Just rocks. Check downstream." The man grunted and started walking along the creek bed, walking directly toward where Kimmy was hidden. Clara's fingers tightened on her revolver. If she shot him, the other 2 would be on her in seconds. If she didn't. A hand touched her shoulder. Dakota. The scarred woman held up 3 fingers, then pointed to herself and 2 of her sisters. She made a slashing motion across her throat. Clara shook her head. Too risky. Dakota's eyes hardened. She pointed at Kimmy's hiding spot, then at the approaching man. Clara understood. They didn't have a choice. She held up her hand. "Wait." The man walked closer, 8 feet from Kimmy now. 6. 4. He stopped. "Hey," he called to the others. "I think I see something." Dakota moved. She exploded from the rocks like a rattlesnake, her knife flashing in the morning light. The blade found the man's throat before he could finish his sentence. He dropped without a sound. The other 2 riders reached for their rifles. Too late. Winona rose from behind a boulder, Clara's second revolver in her hand. The shot cracked across the canyon, and the second man flew backward off his horse. The third rider wheeled around, trying to flee. Clara stepped out and fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder. He screamed and tumbled from his saddle. Clara ran to him before he could recover. She kicked the rifle away from his reaching hand and pressed her boot against his chest. "How many?" she demanded. "How many men does Brackett have looking for us?" The man spat at her feet. "Go to hell, woman." Clara pressed harder. The man groaned in pain. "I'm gonna ask one more time. How many?" "Enough to kill all of you. Brackett knows you're out here. He knows about the Indians. He's got 50 men combing this territory." 50. Clara's heart sank. They were outnumbered nearly 10 to 1. What does he want with them? The man laughed a wet, ugly sound. Same thing he wanted before. The document. He knows they're alive. One of his men saw you cutting them down. You stupid woman, you should have left them hanging. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. Clara. Winona's voice calm and steady. Don't. He deserves it. Yes, but we need information more than we need revenge. Winona knelt beside the wounded man, her face inches from his. Where is Brackett now? I ain't telling you nothing, squaw. Winona grabbed his wounded shoulder and squeezed. The man screamed. Where is Brackett? The Thornton Ranch, 20 miles east. He's using it as headquarters. How many men with him? I don't know, 20, maybe 30 at the ranch. The rest are searching the territory. Winona released him. The man whimpered, clutching his shoulder. One more question, she said. Sheriff Dorian Hale, is he with Brackett? The man's eyes widened. How do you know that name? Answer me. Hale's always with Brackett. They're partners. Have been for years. Everyone knows that. Clara felt sick. The sheriff, the man sworn to protect the people of this territory, was in bed with the monster who'd murdered Samuel. What do we do with him? Dakota asked, gesturing at the wounded man. Clara looked down at him. He was young, barely 20 maybe. Probably grew up poor, took Brackett's money because it was the only option. That didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained it. Tie him up, Clara said. Leave him here. Someone will find him eventually. He'll talk, Dakota said. He'll tell Brackett where we went. He doesn't know where we're going. He knows we're heading toward town. Clara hesitated. Dakota was right. If they left him alive, he'd tell Brackett everything. Winona made the decision for her. She picked up the man's rifle and slammed the butt into his skull. He went limp. He'll wake up in a few hours, Winona said. By then we'll be long gone. And if someone finds him first, then we move faster. They took the 3 horses, a stroke of luck Clara hadn't dared hope for. Now they could make it to town in half the time. Clara helped Kimmy onto one of the horses, then swung up behind her. Winona took the second horse, Dakota the third. The other sisters would have to walk, but they could rotate. Let's go, Clara said. We've got maybe 2 hours before Brackett realizes these men are missing. They rode hard. The trail to town was rougher on horseback but faster. Clara pushed them as hard as she dared, stopping only when the horses needed rest. By mid-morning, she could see the church steeple rising above the distant rooftops. Copper Springs, population 847. 1 sheriff, 1 deputy. 2 saloons, a general store, a boarding house, and more secrets than any town this size had a right to keep. Clara slowed as they approached. We can't all ride in together. A white woman with 6 Apache girls people will notice. What do you suggest? Winona asked. I go in alone. Find Martha. Bring her back to you. And if it's a trap, it won't be. You can't know that. Clara looked at her. You trusted me enough to come this far. Trust me a little further. Winona held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. 1 hour, she said. If you're not back in 1 hour, we come looking. And we won't be quiet about it. Clara almost smiled. 1 hour. She rode into town alone. Copper Springs looked the same as it had a week ago. Dusty streets, weathered buildings, people going about their business like the world wasn't burning down around them. Clara kept her head low, avoiding eye contact. She didn't need anyone recognizing her. Not yet. The boarding house sat at the end of Main Street, a 3-story building with peeling paint and a sagging porch. A sign above the door read, Sims Boarding House, rooms by the night or week. Clara tied her horse to the post and climbed the steps. The door opened before she could knock. Martha Sims stood in the doorway, small, gray-haired, with eyes like chips of flint. She looked Clara up and down, taking in the dust, the exhaustion, the gun at her hip. Clara McAllister, she said. I heard about Samuel. I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. I also heard you've been busy. Martha glanced up and down the street, then stepped aside. Get in here, quick. Clara slipped inside. The boarding house smelled like pipe smoke and old wood. Martha led her down a narrow hallway to a small parlor at the back. Sit, Martha said. Talk. Clara sat. What have you heard? That Brackett's men are tearing the territory apart looking for a white woman who stole his prisoners. That Sheriff Hale put a price on your head, $500. That you're either the bravest woman in Arizona or the stupidest. Maybe both. Probably. Martha lowered herself into a chair across from Clara. Tell me everything. Clara told her. All of it. The hanging tree. The 6 Apache girls. What they'd told her about the massacre. About the treaty document. About Hale being in Brackett's pocket. Martha listened without interrupting. When Clara finished, the old woman was silent for a long moment. 53 people, Martha said finally. 53. Yes, ma'am. And Hale helped cover it up. According to the girls, he did more than cover it up. He was there. He helped Brackett plan it. Martha's jaw tightened. Dorian Hale has been sheriff of this territory for 12 years. 12 years of looking the other way while Brackett stole land and murdered anyone who got in his way. 12 years of pretending to be a lawman while serving a monster. You knew? I suspected, could never prove it. Martha leaned forward. This treaty document, the girls know where it is. They say it's buried under the old mission, 3 miles north of here. If that's true, if we can get our hands on that document, it changes everything. That land belongs to their people, legally. Brackett couldn't touch it. That's why he wants it destroyed. Martha nodded slowly. There's a deputy, Thomas Callahan. He's been trying to build a case against Brackett for years. Good man. Honest. But he's got no power. Hale keeps him under his thumb. Can we trust him? With your life. He lost his wife and daughter 5 years ago. Brackett's men. Made it look like a Comanche raid. Callahan knows the truth. He's been waiting for a chance to bring Brackett down. Clara felt a spark of hope. Where can I find him? He's got a cabin outside town. But Clara... Martha hesitated. If you go to him, there's no coming back. Once Callahan's involved, this becomes war. Real war. People will die. Clara thought about Samuel. About the girls with rope burns on their necks. About Kimmy, 16 years old, watching her parents murdered. People are already dying, Martha. The only question is whether we fight back. Martha studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. Samuel always said you were tougher than you looked. Samuel talked too much. That he did. Martha rose from her chair. I'll send word to Callahan. Tell him to meet you at Miller's Creek just past the old bridge, tonight after dark. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Brackett's got eyes everywhere. If he finds out what we're planning... He won't. He might. Martha gripped Clara's hand. Be careful, child. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. Those girls out there, they're counting on you. Clara squeezed back. I know. She slipped out the back door of the boarding house, circling around to where she'd tied her horse. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Clara's instincts screamed at her to hurry. She was halfway to her horse when she heard the voice. Well, well, Clara McAllister. Clara froze. Sheriff Dorian Hale stepped out of the alley, a rifle in his hands. He was a big man, 6 feet broad shoulders, a face like weathered leather. The star on his chest caught the sunlight. Heard you've been causing trouble, Hale said. Stealing property that don't belong to you. Those girls aren't property. They're Brackett's prisoners. Same thing. Clara's hand drifted toward her revolver. Hale noticed. I wouldn't, he said. I got 3 men on the rooftops with rifles. You so much as twitch toward that gun, they'll put you down before you can blink. Clara looked up. She couldn't see anyone, but that didn't mean they weren't there. What do you want, Hale? Same thing Brackett wants. The document. Tell me where it is, and I'll let you walk away. You can go back to your empty ranch and pretend none of this happened. And the girls? They hang, like they were supposed to. Clara felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. You helped Brackett murder 53 people. Women, children. You burned them alive. Hale's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Truth don't matter much in this territory. Power matters. Brackett has power. I have power. He smiled. You've got nothing. Clara thought about Winona, about Dakota and Kimmy and the others, about the fire in their eyes and the scars on their necks. You're wrong, she said. I've got something you'll never have. What's that? 7 Apache warriors who already died once. And they're coming for you. For just a moment, something flickered in Hale's eyes. Fear. Then it was gone. You're bluffing. Am I? Clara smiled. Your men at the hanging tree. The 3 riders you sent after me this morning. Did they ever check in? Hale's face went pale. That's what I thought. Clara stepped toward her horse. Tell Brackett we're coming. Tell him the dead don't stay buried. And tell him... She paused, her hand on the saddle. Tell him my husband sends his regards. She swung up onto the horse before Hale could react. He raised his rifle. Hold your fire! Someone shouted. Clara wheeled around. A man had stepped out of the general store across the street. Tall, weathered, with a deputy's star on his chest and a double-barreled shotgun in his hands. Thomas Callahan. Lower the rifle, Hale, Callahan said. His voice was calm, steady. This woman ain't done nothing wrong. She's harboring fugitives. She's a widow grieving her husband. Unless you've got evidence she's committed a crime, you let her go. The 2 lawmen stared at each other. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Finally, Hale lowered his rifle. This ain't over, Callahan. No. Callahan agreed. It ain't. Clara didn't waste the opportunity. She kicked her heels into the horse's flanks and rode hard for the edge of town. She didn't look back. Winona was waiting where she'd left them, just past the tree line. We heard a gunshot, she said. What happened? Clara swung down from the saddle, her heart still pounding. We've got an ally, deputy named Callahan. He's meeting us tonight. And the sheriff? Knows we're here, knows we're coming. Clara looked at each of the 6 girls. It's war now, no turning back. Dakota stepped forward. We were never turning back. We need to get to the old mission, Winona said. Get the document before Brackett does. First we meet Callahan. We need to know what we're up against. And if he doesn't show... Clara checked her revolver. All 6 chambers loaded. Then we burn Brackett's world down ourselves. They rode for Miller's Creek as the sun began to set. Clara led the way, Winona beside her, the others following in single file. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. The creek appeared just as darkness fell, a silver ribbon cutting through the rocks. On the far side, a single lantern glowed. Callahan. He was sitting on a boulder, his shotgun across his knees. When he saw them approach, he stood slowly, hands visible at his sides. Mrs. McAllister, he said, you certainly know how to make enemies. It's a gift. And these must be the Apache women everyone's looking for. Callahan's eyes swept over the group. You know Brackett's offering $1,000 for each of them. We know. You know he's got 60 men ready to ride the moment he finds out where you are. 60 now. It was 50 this morning. Callahan almost smiled. He's scared. Good. He turned to Winona. You're the one who knows where the treaty is hidden. Winona stepped forward. I am. And you're willing to testify in court against Brackett and Hale. I will testify anywhere. I will tell the truth to anyone who will listen, and when the truth is told, her voice hardened. I will watch them hang from the same tree where they tried to hang us. Callahan studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I've been waiting 15 years for this, he said. 15 years of watching Brackett destroy everything good in this territory. 15 years of knowing the truth and not being able to prove it. Now you can prove it, Clara said. The document, the witnesses, it's all here. It's not that simple. Even with the document, even with testimony, Brackett owns the judges. He owns the territory. Any trial held here, he'll walk free. Then we don't hold the trial here. Callahan raised an eyebrow. What do you have in mind? Clara took a deep breath. This was the plan she'd been turning over in her mind since she left Martha's. Federal Court, Denver. We get the document, get the girls somewhere safe, and send word to the federal marshals. Brackett's crimes, the massacre, the land theft, the murder, those are federal offenses. He can't buy the federal government. You're talking about smuggling evidence and witnesses across 200 miles of territory that Brackett controls. Yes. With 60 men hunting us. Yes. Against a man who's never lost a fight in his life. Clara looked at Callahan. Are you in or out? Silence. Then Callahan started to laugh. It was a rough sound like stones rattling in a bucket, but it was real. Hell, he said. I've been waiting to die for something worthwhile for 15 years. Might as well be this. Winona extended her hand. Then we are allies. Callahan shook it. Allies. We need to move, Clara said. The mission first. We get the document tonight while Brackett's men are still scattered. Agreed. Callahan picked up his shotgun. I know a path that'll get us there by midnight. Rough going, but hidden. Lead the way. They mounted up and rode into the darkness. Behind them, Copper Springs glowed faintly against the night sky. Ahead, the black shapes of the mountains loomed like sleeping giants. Somewhere out there, Brackett was gathering his army. Somewhere out there, Hale was sharpening his knives. Somewhere out there, 60 men were waiting to kill them all. But Clara McAllister wasn't afraid anymore. She had an army of her own now. Small, battered, half dead, and more dangerous than anything Brackett had ever faced. The old mission appeared through the darkness like a ghost rising from the earth. Callahan held up his hand, signaling them to stop. They dismounted in silence, tying the horses to a dead juniper tree 50 yards back. 2 guards, Callahan whispered. Front entrance. Brackett's already got men here. Clara's stomach dropped. How did he know? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he's just covering every possible hiding spot. Callahan checked his shotgun. Either way, we've got a problem. Winona moved beside them, her eyes fixed on the crumbling walls ahead. My father died protecting this document. I'm not leaving without it. Nobody said we're leaving. Clara turned to Dakota. Can you get close without being seen? Dakota's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. I could walk up and tap them on the shoulder before they knew I was there. Don't tap, just handle it. Dakota nodded and melted into the shadows. Chenoa followed without being asked. The rest of them waited. Clara counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. A soft whistle cut through the night. That's the signal, Winona said. They're clear. They moved quickly across the open ground. Clara expected gunfire at any moment, expected to feel a bullet tear through her back. But nothing came. When they reached the mission entrance, she found both guards unconscious, bound and gagged with strips of their own shirts. Alive, Clara asked. For now, Dakota said. They'll wake up with headaches, nothing more. Clara nodded. She wasn't sure she'd have shown the same mercy, but that was Dakota's choice to make. The inside of the mission was pitch black. Callahan lit a small lantern, keeping the flame low. The light revealed crumbling walls, a collapsed roof open to the stars, and an altar at the far end that had been stripped of everything valuable decades ago. Where? Clara asked Winona. Winona walked to the altar. She knelt beside it, running her fingers along the stone floor. My father said 3 paces east of the altar, 2 paces north. Look for a stone with a cross carved into it. They searched. Kimmy found it first, a flat stone barely visible beneath years of dust and debris. She brushed it clean, revealing a small cross etched into the surface. "This is it," she breathed. Dakota and Callahan pried the stone up with their knives. Beneath it was a hollow space, and inside that space, a leather pouch. Winona reached down with trembling hands. She lifted the pouch as if it were made of glass. Slowly, carefully, she opened it and withdrew a folded document yellowed with age, but still intact. "The Treaty of Iron Horse Creek," she whispered. "Signed by Chief Running Bear and Commissioner William Harding, 1862. Clara leaned closer. Even in the dim light, she could see the official seals, the careful handwriting, the signatures at the bottom. "This is it," Callahan said. His voice was hoarse. "This is proof. Legal proof that Brackett's been stealing land that was never his to take." "It's more than that," Winona said. "This document grants our people rights to water, to hunting grounds, to minerals beneath the earth. Brackett isn't just a land thief. He's been violating federal treaty law for 20 years. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Hope. Real hope. For the first time since Samuel died, she believed they might actually win. Then Tala's voice cut through the darkness. "Someone's coming." Clara killed the lantern. They pressed against the walls, weapons drawn, barely breathing. Hoofbeats, getting closer, a lot of them. "How many?" Clara whispered. "Too many," Callahan answered. "We need another way out." "There isn't one. I checked when we came in." "Then we fight." Winona grabbed Clara's arm. "No, we can't risk the document. If we die here, it dies with us." "What do you suggest?" Winona was silent for a moment. Then she turned to her sisters and spoke rapidly in their own language. Dakota's face went hard. Chenoa shook her head. Kimi started to cry. "What?" Clara demanded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that we need to split up." Winona pressed the leather pouch into Clara's hands. "You and Callahan take this. Get it to Denver. Get it to the federal marshals. And you? We'll draw them away. Give you time to escape." "That's suicide." "Maybe." Winona's eyes were steady. "But our people have been dying for this land for generations. If 6 more deaths can save it, that's a price worth paying." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was crazy. But she looked at the 6 faces around her, Dakota's fierce determination, Kimi's trembling courage, Winona's absolute certainty, and she understood. They'd already decided, long before tonight. Maybe long before Clara had ever cut them down from that tree. "I won't let your sacrifice be for nothing," Clara said. "I swear it." Winona touched Clara's face, a gentle gesture, almost tender. "I know you won't. That's why we're trusting you." "Winona, go, now, before it's too late." Clara wanted to say something more, something meaningful, but there wasn't time. There was never enough time. Callahan grabbed her arm. "This way. There's a gap in the back wall, barely big enough to squeeze through, but—" A gunshot exploded through the night. "They're in the mission!" someone shouted. "Surround it!" Everything happened at once. Dakota was moving before the echo faded, charging toward the entrance with her knife drawn. Chenoa and Ayana followed their war cries, splitting the darkness. Tala grabbed one of the guards' rifles and fired through a gap in the wall. "Go!" Winona screamed. "Go now!" Clara ran. She hated herself, for it hated every step that took her farther from the women who'd trusted her with their lives. But she ran. Callahan led her through the rubble, past the collapsed altar to a narrow gap in the back wall. He shoved her through first, then squeezed after her. The gap was tight, stone, scraped her shoulders, tore her shirt, but she made it. They emerged into open desert behind the mission. The sounds of fighting echoed behind them, gunfire screams, the thunder of horses. "Don't look back," Callahan said. "Just run." Clara ran. They'd hidden 2 horses behind a ridge 100 yards from the mission. Emergency escape. Clara hadn't really believed they'd need them. She believed now. They mounted and rode hard into the darkness, the document pressed against Clara's chest like a second heartbeat. Behind them the gunfire continued. Then slowly, gradually, it began to fade. Clara didn't know if that meant the fighting was over. She didn't know if her friends were alive or dead. She only knew that she was riding away from them and that every stride of the horse felt like a betrayal. They rode for 2 hours without stopping. When the horses couldn't go any further, Callahan finally slowed. They'd reached a narrow canyon invisible from a distance with high walls on both sides. "We can rest here," he said. "An hour. No more." Clara dismounted. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She leaned against a boulder, her chest heaving, the leather pouch still clutched in her hands. "They're probably dead," she said. "All of them." "You don't know that." 60 men against 6 women. What chance did they have? Callahan was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down beside her, his shotgun across his knees. "When I was 17, he said, I watched a Comanche war party take down a company of cavalry. 30 soldiers against 8 warriors. The soldiers had better guns, better horses, better training." He paused. "The Comanche won." "How?" "Because they weren't fighting for money or orders. They were fighting for their land, for their families, for something worth dying for." He looked at Clara. "Those women back there, they're fighters. Don't bury them before they're dead." Clara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe. "Even if some of them survived," she said, "Brackett won't stop. He'll hunt them down. He'll hunt us down. He won't rest until that document is destroyed and we're all in the ground. Then we better make sure we destroy him first." Clara looked at the pouch in her hands. Such a small thing. A few pieces of paper, some ink, some signatures. But men had died for it. Women had bled for it. 53 souls had burned so that Brackett could steal what this document proved was never his. "How far to Denver?" she asked. 200 miles, through territory Brackett controls." "How long?" "A week if we're careful. Less if we push." "Then we push." Clara stood, her exhaustion forgotten. "Every day we waste is another day Brackett can hunt down the survivors. Another day he can cover his tracks." Callahan rose beside her. "You're not the same woman who walked into Martha's boarding house this morning." "No, I'm not." "Good." He mounted his horse. "Because the woman we need now, she's got to be willing to do things that would have made the old Clara sick." "Like what?" Callahan's eyes were hard in the moonlight. "Like kill without hesitation. Like sacrifice people she cares about. Like become the thing that monsters fear." Clara thought about Samuel, about his gentle hands and his easy laugh and the way he'd believed until the very end that justice would prevail. Justice hadn't saved him. Justice hadn't saved Winona's family. Maybe it was time to try something else. "Tell me about Brackett," Clara said. "Everything. Every weakness. Every fear. Every person he's ever loved." "Why?" Clara swung into her saddle. "Because I'm going to take them all away from him, one by one, until there's nothing left but him and me and the rope he used on my husband." Callahan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Let's ride." They rode through the rest of the night. Callahan talked as they went, keeping his voice low, telling Clara everything he'd learned in 15 years of watching Brackett from the shadows. The man's history, his business partners, his enemies, the people he'd destroyed, and the ones he'd bought. "He wasn't always like this," Callahan said. 20 years ago he was just another rancher. Small spread, couple hundred head of cattle. Then he found silver on his land. Silver changed him. Money changes everyone. But it wasn't just the silver. It was the power that came with it. He bought his first sheriff with that silver. Then his first judge. Then his first politician. By the time anyone realized what he'd become, it was too late. And Hale. Callahan's jaw tightened. Hale was a deputy when Brackett was coming up. Young, ambitious, no family to speak of. Brackett saw something in him. Something dark. Made him an offer. Money. Power. Protection. In exchange. In exchange for doing the dirty work. Exactly. Every killing, every burning, every disappearance. Hale was there, usually pulling the trigger himself. Clara thought about the girls at the mission. About Winona's face in the darkness, calm and certain, telling her to run. When this is over, Clara said, Hale dies. Whatever else happens, he doesn't walk away. Agreed. Dawn was breaking when they reached the first way station, a small trading post at the edge of the territory. Callahan knew the owner, an old man named Whitaker, who'd lost his son to Brackett's men years ago. We need fresh horses, Callahan said. Food. Ammunition. Whitaker didn't ask questions. He took one look at their faces, at the dust and blood and exhaustion, and led them around back. Brackett's men came through yesterday, he said, asking about a white woman traveling with Indians. I told them I hadn't seen nothing. Did they believe you? Don't matter, I'm too old to scare. Whitaker handed Clara a bundle of food. There's a back trail through the mountains. Adds a day to the trip, but Brackett's men don't know about it. My boy used to run it when he was... before. Thank you, Clara said. We won't forget this. Don't thank me yet. Whitaker looked toward the horizon. Word is, Brackett's offering $5,000 for you now. $10,000 for the document. That kind of money. He shook his head. It makes good men do bad things. Then we'll just have to move faster than the bad things. They switched horses and rode on. The mountain trail was rough, barely visible in places, but Whitaker was right. There was no sign of pursuit. They climbed through narrow passes and descended into hidden valleys, following a path that generations of traders and smugglers had carved into the rock. On the second day, Callahan's horse threw a shoe. They had to stop for repairs, losing precious hours. Clara paced back and forth, her anxiety building with every minute. We should keep moving. We'll kill the horse, then we'll both be walking. Then give me your horse, I'll go ahead. And leave you alone in territory full of men who want you dead. Callahan shook his head. Samuel would haunt me for eternity. The mention of Samuel's name hit Clara like a physical blow. She stopped pacing. You knew him. Everyone knew Samuel McAllister. He was one of the few honest men in the territory. Callahan looked up from the horse's hoof. He used to come to me sometimes, late at night when he'd heard things. Rumors about Brackett, about disappearances. He wanted to help. Why didn't you let him? Because I knew what would happen if Brackett found out. Callahan's voice was heavy. Turns out Brackett found out anyway. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Samuel never told me. He was trying to protect you. He was trying to protect everyone. That's who he was. Callahan finished with the shoe and stood. Then let's make sure he didn't die for nothing. On the third day they descended from the mountains into a broad valley. The Denver road was visible in the distance, a thin line cutting across the landscape. Almost there, Callahan said. Another 2 days at most. That's when Clara saw the smoke. It rose from a point maybe 5 miles ahead, a thin gray column against the blue sky. Too big for a campfire. Too small for a wildfire. What is that? Callahan's face went grim. There's a stagecoach station ahead. The Hendricks place. Good people. They rode faster. The station was burning when they arrived. Clara pulled up short, her heart slamming against her ribs. The main building was engulfed in flames. 2 bodies lay in the yard, a man and a woman, their blood soaking into the dirt. God! Callahan breathed. No. They dismounted and approached slowly, guns drawn. There was no sign of the attackers. No horses, no riders, nothing. Just the bodies and the burning building. Clara knelt beside the woman. Her eyes were open, staring at the sky. A bullet hole in her chest. Another in her forehead. They were executed, Clara said. After they were dead, someone shot them again. to make sure. Brackett's signature. He always double taps. Clara stood. Her hands were shaking, not with fear, but with rage. Why? Why would he do this? These people had nothing to do with... They didn't need to. Callahan's voice was cold. This is a message. To everyone in the territory. This is what happens when you help Clara McAllister. Clara looked at the burning building, at the bodies, at the senseless, brutal waste of it all. Something inside her shifted. The last piece of the old Clara, the rancher's wife. The quiet woman who'd never hurt anyone, who'd believed in justice and mercy and the goodness of the human heart, that piece died on that blood-soaked ground. What rose up in its place was something else, something harder, something that looked at the world without flinching and saw it for what it really was. "We're not going to Denver," Clara said. Callahan stared at her. "What? Brackett expects us to run, to flee, to try to reach federal protection." Clara turned to face him. "That's what he's prepared for. That's why he's burning way station and killing innocents. To slow us down. To make us panic." "What's the alternative?" Clara's mind was racing now, seeing the situation clearly for the first time. "We go back. Back where? Back to Copper Springs. Back to the mission." Clara's eyes were blazing. "Brackett thinks he's won. He thinks the girls are dead and we're running scared. He'll pull his men back, consolidate, wait for us to surface. And that's when we hit him." Clara grabbed Callahan's arm. "Not in Denver, surrounded by lawyers and politicians. Here, on his own ground, where he thinks he's safe." "With what army?" Clara thought about Martha Sims, with her decades of secrets and her burning hatred. About Whitaker, who'd lost his son. About all the ranchers and shopkeepers and widows Brackett had destroyed over the years. "We don't need an army," Clara said. "We need a spark. Something to show people that Brackett can bleed, that he can be beaten." She held up the document. "This is that spark. We make copies, spread them across the territory. Let everyone see what Brackett's been doing. Let them know their land, their rights, their lives, they were all stolen by a monster. That could start a war." "Good." Clara's voice was ice. "I'm tired of fighting alone." Callahan looked at her for a long moment, at her hard eyes, her clenched jaw, the gun on her hip and the fire in her soul. "Samuel wouldn't recognize you," he said quietly. "Samuel's dead." Clara swung into her saddle. "And I'm the one who's going to make sure his killer joins him." She turned her horse and rode toward the mountains. After a moment, Callahan followed. Behind them, the station continued to burn. They reached Martha's boarding house just after midnight. Clara slipped through the back door, her hand on her revolver. The kitchen was dark, silent. For a terrible moment, she thought Brackett had gotten here first. Then a match flared. Martha sat at the table, a shotgun across her lap. Her face was hard as granite in the flickering light. "You came back," she said. "Figured you'd be halfway to Denver by now. Change of plans." Martha's eyes moved to Callahan, then back to Clara. "What kind of change?" Clara pulled the document from her coat and laid it on the table. "The kind that ends with Brackett in the ground." Martha stared at the document. Her weathered hands reached out, trembling slightly, and touched the yellowed paper. "Sweet Jesus," she whispered. "It's real. It's real. And we're going to use it to tear Brackett apart." Martha looked up. "How?" Clara sat down across from her. "I need to know everyone in this territory who has a reason to hate Silas Brackett. Everyone he's cheated. Everyone he's threatened. Everyone who's lost someone to his men." "That's half the territory, girl." "Good. Then we've got half the territory." Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to a cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a thick leather ledger. 40 years I've been keeping this," she said. "Every secret, every crime, every body that Brackett buried." She dropped the ledger on the table with a heavy thud. "I was waiting for someone brave enough to use it." Clara opened the ledger. Names, dates, details. Page after page of Brackett's sins recorded in Martha's careful handwriting. This is enough to hang him 10 times over. Ain't about hanging, not yet. Martha leaned forward. First, we need to get people angry enough to fight. Scared people don't rise up. Angry people do. Callahan spoke for the first time. She's right. Brackett's kept control through fear. We need to break that fear. How? Show them he can bleed. Clara's voice was steady. We need a victory. Something public. Something everyone will see. Martha nodded slowly. The silver shipment. What silver shipment? Every month Brackett sends his silver to the bank in Denver. Armed guards. Armored wagon. Always takes the same route. Martha's eyes gleamed. It leaves in 3 days. Clara looked at Callahan. Can we take it? With what, the two of us against a dozen armed guards? Not just us. Clara turned back to Martha. Your ledger. There must be men in there who'd fight if they thought they had a chance. Martha smiled. It was not a kind smile. There's a few who've been waiting for this day a long time. She opened the ledger and began to read names. By dawn they had a list. 12 men. Ranchers, shopkeepers, miners. All of them had lost something to Brackett. A brother, a wife, a life savings. All of them had sworn at one time or another that they'd kill Brackett if they ever got the chance. Now Clara was going to give them that chance. Callahan went out at first light, moving quietly from house to house delivering the message. Martha made copies of the treaty document, hiding them in places across town. If anything happened to Clara, the truth would still get out. Clara spent the morning cleaning her weapons and trying not to think about Winona. She failed. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mission, the flash of gunfire. Winona's face in the darkness telling her to run. The sounds of battle fading behind her as she fled. Were they alive? Dead, captured, Clara didn't know. And not knowing was worse than anything. A knock at the door made her jump. Martha answered it. A moment later, she returned with a young man Clara didn't recognize. He was maybe 20, with dark hair and nervous eyes. This is Ben Whitaker, Martha said. Old Whitaker's grandson. He rode in this morning. Ben stepped forward, his hat in his hands. Ma'am, my grandfather sent me. Said you'd want to know. Know what? About the Apache women, the ones Brackett was hunting. Clara's heart stopped. What about them? They're alive. Most of them anyway. Brackett's got them locked up at his ranch. Says he's gonna hang them public in the town square, tomorrow at noon. Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Alive. They were alive. Tomorrow, she repeated. That's the same day as the silver shipment, Callahan said. He'd come in through the back door, his face grim. Brackett's planning to make an example. Hang the women while everyone's watching, then parade his silver through town. Show everyone who's in charge. Clara's mind raced. 2 targets. Same day. Same time. An impossible choice. We can't do both, Callahan said. Hit the shipment and the women hang. Rescue the women and Brackett keeps his silver, keeps his power. Clara looked at the document on the table, at the names in Martha's ledger, at the faces of the men who'd risked everything to stand with her. We do both, she said. That's suicide. Maybe, but I didn't come this far to let Winona die on Brackett's gallows. Clara turned to Ben. How many men guarding the women? Dozen maybe, at the ranch. But the hanging that'll be in town. Public. Brackett wants everyone to see. How many guarding him in town? His personal guard, 6 men, plus Sheriff Hale. Clara looked at Callahan. The silver shipment. How many guards? 12, maybe 15. Split them. Clara's voice was hard. We take 6 men to hit the shipment. Draw off Brackett's forces. Make him think that's our target. Meanwhile, I take the rest into town and free the women before they reach the gallows. You'll be outnumbered. Will be unexpected. Clara turned to Martha. I need guns, as many as you can get, and I need someone inside Brackett's organization, someone who can tell us exactly where the women are and how they're guarded. Martha smiled that cold smile again. I know just the person. 3 hours later, Clara sat across from a man she never thought she'd trust. Victor Reyes had been one of Brackett's foremen for 15 years. He'd helped build the man's empire. He'd looked the other way when the killing started. He'd taken his pay and kept his mouth shut. But 2 years ago, Brackett had killed Victor's daughter. Called it an accident. Everyone knew better. Victor had been waiting for revenge ever since. The women are in the east barn, Victor said. His voice was flat, emotionless. Chained to the posts. 2 guards inside, 2 outside. They'll move them to the wagon around 11. Take them to town for the hanging. What about Brackett? He'll be at the ranch until the last minute. Wants to see them loaded up himself. Then he rides to town with his personal guard. Clara leaned forward. I need you to do something. When the wagon leaves, I need those guards looking the wrong way. Even for a minute. Victor met her eyes. What do I get in return? You get to watch Brackett die. Victor was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll start a fire. East side of the property. They'll have to respond. That'll give you maybe 3-4 minutes. That's enough. Victor stood to leave. At the door he paused. My daughter's name was Maria. She was 17. His voice cracked. Make sure Brackett knows her name before he dies. I will. Victor disappeared into the night. Clara turned to find Callahan watching her. His face was unreadable. You're really going to do this, he said. I am. Even knowing you might not survive. Even knowing that. Callahan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver star. A deputy's badge. This belonged to my wife, he said. She was a deputy too. Before Brackett. Before everything. He pressed the badge into Clara's hand. She would have liked you. Clara looked at the star. At the scratches and dents that told a story of service. Of sacrifice. I'll bring it back, she said. You better. The next morning came too fast. Clara gathered her team in the pre-dawn darkness. 8 men, all armed, all ready to die. She split them in 2. Callahan took 4 toward the silver shipment route. Clara kept the rest. Remember, she said, we're not trying to win a war. We're trying to start one. Hit hard, hit fast, and disappear. Make Brackett chase shadows. Callahan nodded. If things go bad, they won't. But if they do, then I'll see you in hell and we'll burn it down together. Callahan almost smiled. Then he mounted up and rode into the darkness, his men following close behind. Clara turned to her group. 4 men. A shopkeeper. A miner. 2 ranchers who'd lost their farms to Brackett's schemes. You all know the plan, she said. We wait for Victor's signal. Then we move. Get the women free. Get them to the horses. Ride like the devil himself is chasing us. What about Brackett? One of the ranchers asked. Brackett's mine. They rode. The Brackett ranch appeared as the sun crested the mountains. Clara and her men hung back, hidden in a draw 1/2 mile from the property. From here she could see the east barn. The guards. The wagon waiting to carry Winona and her sisters to their deaths. She checked her weapons. Revolver loaded. Rifle loaded. Knife in her boot. The wait was agony. Every minute felt like an hour. Every sound made her jump. She watched the guards patrol, counting their steps, memorizing their patterns. Then she saw smoke. Victor's signal. A plume of black rising from the east side of the property. Fire! Someone shouted. Fire in the equipment shed! The guards reacted exactly as Victor had predicted. They ran toward the smoke, leaving the barn unprotected. Now! Clara said. "Move!" They burst from cover, riding hard. Clara reached the barn first. She was off her horse before it stopped, already running for the door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of hay. And there, chained to the posts, were 5 women: Winona, Dakota, Ayanna, Chenoa, Tala. Winona's head snapped up when Clara appeared. Her face was bruised, her lips split, but her eyes were blazing with life. "Clara!" Her voice cracked. "You came back." "I told you I would." Clara pulled out her knife and went to work on the chains. "Where's Kimmy?" Winona's face darkened. "They took her. Last night." Brackett wanted to question her separately. Clara's blood went cold. "Question her about what?" "The document. Where we hid it." Winona's chains fell away. She grabbed Clara's arm. "She didn't tell him anything. But Clara, she's just a child. I don't know how much more she can take." "Where is she?" "The main house, Brackett's personal quarters." Clara freed the last of the chains. The other men were helping the women to their feet, guiding them toward the horses. "Get them out of here," Clara said. "I'm going after Kimmy." "Clara, no." "She's 16 years old, Winona. I'm not leaving her." Winona grabbed Clara's shoulders. "Then I'm coming with you." "You can barely stand." "I've fought in worse condition." Winona's voice was iron. "She's my sister. Where she goes, I go." There wasn't time to argue. Clara handed Winona a revolver. "Stay behind me. Shoot anything that moves." They ran. The main house was 100 yards away. Clara could see guards running toward the fire chaos spreading across the property. Good. The more confusion, the better. They reached the back door. Clara kicked it in. Inside they moved fast, through a kitchen, down a hallway, following the sounds of voices to a room at the end. Clara pressed her ear to the door. A man's voice, low, threatening. "Tell me where the document is and this stops. It's simple." Then a girl's voice, weak, defiant. "I'll never tell you. Never." "Kimmy." Clara didn't wait. She kicked the door open and fired. The first shot caught the guard by the door. He went down screaming. The second shot missed Brackett by inches as he dove behind a desk. Kimmy was in the center of the room, tied to a chair. Her face was swollen. Blood dripped from a cut above her eye, but she was alive. "Winona!" she cried. Winona was already moving, cutting her sister free, while Clara kept her gun trained on the desk. "Come out, Brackett!" Clara called. "It's over." A laugh from behind the desk. Cold. Cruel. "Over. It's just beginning, Mrs. McAllister." Brackett rose slowly, his hands raised. But he was smiling. That smile made Clara's skin crawl. "You think you've won something here. You've rescued a few women. Stolen a worthless document. Killed a few of my men." He took a step forward. "Do you know how many men I have? How many judges? How many politicians? I know about the massacre. 53 people. Women, children. Burned alive. Savages. The territory is better off without them." Winona made a sound like a wounded animal. Clara put out a hand to stop her. "You're going to hang Brackett. One way or another. You're going to hang." Brackett's smile widened. "Am I?" The door behind Clara exploded inward. She spun, firing, but there were too many. Brackett's personal guard come back from the fire. 6 men with rifles surrounding them. "Drop your weapons," one of them ordered. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. She could take 2 of them, maybe 3, but not all 6. Winona stood beside her, Kimmy in her arms, both of them ready to die. Then a voice rang out from the hallway. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Clara's heart stopped. Callahan stepped through the door, his shotgun raised. Behind him came 4 more men, and they were dragging something. Someone. Sheriff Dorian Hale. His face was bloody. His hands were bound. He looked like he'd been dragged behind a horse. "Found him trying to sneak out the back with the silver," Callahan said. Guess he was planning to run when things went south. Brackett's face went pale. Dorian, he's been very cooperative, Callahan continued. Told us all about your arrangement, the massacres, the land deals, the bodies you buried. He smiled coldly. Every single one. Hale looked at Brackett with something like hatred in his eyes. You left me. You promised we'd both get out. But you were going to run and leave me to take the fall. Dorian listened to me. No. Hale spat blood at Brackett's feet. I'm done listening. I'm done being your dog. Clara felt the balance of power shift in the room. Brackett's guards were looking at each other, uncertainty creeping into their faces. Put down your weapons, Clara said. This is over. Your boss is finished. Hale is going to testify against him. The document proves his crimes. You can walk away right now, or you can die defending a man who'd sell you out in a heartbeat. Silence. Then one by one the guards lowered their rifles. Brackett's face twisted with rage. Cowards, all of you. Cowards! He lunged for Clara, his hands reaching for her throat. He never made it. Winona moved faster than Clara had ever seen anyone move. The knife in her hand flashed, and then Brackett was on the ground screaming, clutching his leg where the blade had gone in. That, Winona said, is for my father. She pulled the knife out. Brackett screamed louder. And this? Winona raised the knife again. Winona. Clara caught her arm. Not yet, not like this. Winona's eyes were wild. He murdered my family. He burned my village. He deserves to hang. Publicly. In front of everyone he's terrorized. Clara held her gaze. Let them see him for what he is. Let them watch him die like the criminal he is. That's justice. Winona trembled. The knife shook in her hand. Then slowly she lowered it. Justice, she whispered. Apache, justice. Yes. Clara turned to Callahan. Get word out. Every town, every ranch, every person who suffered under this man. Tomorrow morning, Silas Brackett and Dorian Hale stand trial in Copper Springs. And when they're found guilty... She looked at Brackett bleeding on the floor, his empire crumbling around him. They hang. Brackett's eyes met hers. For the first time she saw fear in them. You can't do this, he whispered. You're nobody. You're just a rancher's widow. Clara smiled. It was the same cold smile she'd learned from Martha. No, she said. I'm Clara McAllister, and I'm the woman who brought you down. The trial began at dawn. Clara stood at the front of the crowd, Winona beside her watching, as they dragged Brackett and Hale into the town square. The two men were chained together, their fine clothes torn and filthy, their faces bearing the marks of the fight. 300 people had gathered, maybe more. Ranchers, miners, shopkeepers. Women who'd lost husbands, children who'd lost fathers. All of them staring at the men who'd terrorized this territory for 20 years. Martha Sims had done her work well. Callahan stepped forward, the treaty document in his hands. His voice carried across the square. People of Copper Springs, you all know why we're here. For 20 years, Silas Brackett has stolen your land, murdered your families, corrupted your law. He held up the document. This is proof. A federal treaty signed in 1862 granting the Apache people rights to the land Brackett claims as his own. Every acre of his ranch, every ounce of silver from his mines, all of it stolen. A murmur rippled through the crowd. And this man, Callahan pointed at Hale. Sheriff Dorian Hale, the man sworn to protect you. He helped Brackett do it. He was there when 53 Apache men, women, and children were burned alive. He pulled the trigger himself. The murmur grew to a roar. Murderer! Someone shouted. Hang them! Justice! Brackett struggled against his chains, his face twisted with contempt. You fools! He screamed. I built this territory. Without me, you'd all be starving in the dirt. A rock flew from the crowd and struck him in the face. Blood streamed from his lip. Clara stepped forward, raising her hand for silence. "Let them speak," she said. "Let them try to justify what they've done." The crowd quieted. Clara turned to face Brackett. "You murdered my husband, Samuel McAllister. He refused to sell you his land, so you hanged him from a cottonwood tree and left him for the crows." Her voice was steady, cold. "Do you remember him?" Brackett spat blood onto the ground. "He was nobody. Just another fool who got in my way. He was everything to me." Clara pulled Samuel's revolver from her holster. The crowd gasped. "Clara!" Callahan's voice was warning. "Not like this. I'm not going to shoot him." Clara walked forward until she was inches from Brackett's face. "I'm going to do something worse." She turned to Winona. "This man killed your family, your people. 53 souls burned alive because he wanted a piece of paper." Clara held out the revolver. "Apache justice. You decide." Winona took the gun. For a long moment she just stared at it. Then she looked up at Brackett. "My father's name was Running Bear. He was a chief, a leader, a good man." Her voice trembled, but her hand was steady. "My mother's name was Morning Star. She taught me to weave, to cook, to love." Brackett tried to look away. Winona grabbed his chin and forced him to meet her eyes. "Look at me. Look at me." He looked. "I could kill you right now. One bullet. It would be easy." Winona pressed the barrel against his forehead. "But that's not what my father would want." She lowered the gun. "My father believed in justice, real justice, not revenge." Winona stepped back. "So you're going to hang, legally, publicly. And every person in this territory is going to watch. They're going to see what happens to men who think they're above the law." She handed the revolver back to Clara. "That's Apache justice." The crowd erupted. Cheers. Tears. People embracing each other, releasing 20 years of fear and rage. Clara looked at Winona. The younger woman's face was wet with tears she wasn't trying to hide. "Your father would be proud," Clara said. "I know." They built the gallows in the center of the square. It took most of the morning. Men who'd been too afraid to lift a finger against Brackett now worked side by side, hammering nails, testing ropes. The whole town pitched in. Martha brought food for the workers. Kimmy sat with her sisters, still recovering from her ordeal, but alive. Safe. Clara watched it all, feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not the peace of resolution that would come later, but the peace of knowing she'd done everything she could. Whatever happened next, Brackett would pay for his crimes. Samuel would be avenged. The Apache would have their land. Callahan appeared beside her. "Federal marshal's on his way. Should be here by nightfall. He'll take official custody of the prisoners." "Good. You know Brackett's lawyers will fight this. He's got money, connections. This could drag on for years." Clara looked at the gallows. "He won't live that long." "Clara, I'm not going to murder him, Callahan, but I'm not going to let him escape either." She turned to face him. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes, this ends today." Callahan studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "There's something else you should know." "What?" "Victor Reyes, the man who helped us get into the ranch." Callahan paused. "Brackett's men killed him. Last night, while we were moving the prisoners. Someone talked." Clara closed her eyes. Another death. Another name on the list of people who'd sacrificed everything to bring Brackett down. Did he have family? A wife, 2 sons. They'll be taken care of, whatever they need. I'll see to it. Clara opened her eyes. The sun was climbing higher. The gallows was almost complete. How much longer? An hour, maybe 2. Then we finish this. Noon came bright and hot. The entire town had gathered. Clara estimated 500 people now, maybe more. Word had spread through the territory like wildfire. People had ridden from miles away to see this, to see the end of Silas Brackett. Clara stood at the base of the gallows, Winona on her right, Callahan on her left. The 6 Apache women formed a line behind her. Dakota, Ayana, Chenoa, Tala, and Kimi. All of them scarred. All of them survivors. All of them watching the men who'd tried to destroy them climb the gallows steps. Brackett went first. His legs nearly gave out twice, but the guards pushed him forward. His face was pale, his arrogance finally cracking. Hale followed. The sheriff looked smaller somehow, diminished, like the power he'd borrowed from Brackett had drained away, leaving nothing but a weak old man. The hangman positioned them under the nooses. Callahan stepped forward with a paper in his hands. Silas Brackett, Dorian Hale, you have been found guilty by the people of this territory of murder, arson, conspiracy, and crimes against the United States government. The sentence is death by hanging. He looked at Clara. Do the condemned have any final words? Hale spoke first. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. For all of it. I was weak. Brackett promised me power and I believed him. He looked at Winona. I know it doesn't matter. I know sorry doesn't bring back the people I helped kill. But I am. I'm sorry. Winona said nothing. Her face was stone. Hale lowered his head. Then Brackett spoke. You think this changes anything? His voice was stronger now, defiant even at the end. There will be others after me. Men with money, with power. They'll take what they want just like I did. That's the way of the world. The strong survive. The weak rise up. Clara interrupted. The weak find their strength. The weak become an army. She stepped closer to the gallows. You made one mistake, Brackett. You thought you could break us. But every person you killed, every family you destroyed, they didn't just die. They became fuel. Fuel for a fire you couldn't put out. She looked at the crowd. He wanted you afraid. He wanted you alone. He wanted you to believe you had no power. Clara's voice rang across the square. But look around. Look at yourselves. 500 people standing together. That's power. That's the power he was afraid of. A cheer went up from the crowd. Clara turned back to Brackett. Any last words? Brackett's face twisted with hatred. Go to hell. Clara smiled. You first. She nodded to the hangman. The trapdoors opened. The ropes snapped taut. And Silas Brackett and Dorian Hale dropped into eternity. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then someone started to clap. Another joined in. Another. The applause built like thunder rolling across the square, releasing 20 years of fear and pain and rage. Clara stood motionless, watching the bodies swing. She didn't feel joy, didn't feel triumph. She felt empty, like something had been carved out of her, and she wasn't sure what would fill the space. A hand touched her shoulder. Winona. It's done, Winona said softly. It's finally done. Is it? The men who killed your husband are dead. The men who killed my family are dead. Winona turned Clara to face her. We did what we came to do. Now we have to figure out how to live. I don't know how. Neither do I. Winona's eyes were wet. But maybe we figure it out together. Clara looked at the Apache women standing behind Winona. Dakota with her scars. Kimi with her youth. All of them broken. All of them healing. All of them family now. Samuel used to say that family isn't about blood, Clara said. It's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. He was wise. He was stubborn. Clara almost smiled. But yeah, wise too. The federal marshal arrived at sunset. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes, and he wasn't happy about what he found. You hanged them without due process, he said. Without a trial. Without federal authority. They had a trial, Callahan said. 500 witnesses. A confession from Sheriff Hale. Evidence of crimes going back 20 years. That's not how the law works. Clara stepped forward. The law failed these people for 20 years. Every judge, every sheriff, every politician. Brackett owned them all. What were we supposed to do? Wait for justice that was never coming. The marshal studied her. His face was unreadable. You're Clara McAllister, the rancher's widow. That's right. Word of what you did is already spreading. Denver, Washington, everywhere. He paused. Some people are calling you a hero. Others are calling you a vigilante. I don't care what they call me. You should, because what happens next depends on how this story gets told. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? The marshal pulled a document from his coat. The treaty you recovered. I've verified it. It's authentic. Which means all the land Brackett claimed, every acre, every mine belongs to the Apache people. Winona stepped forward, her eyes wide. You're honoring the treaty. I'm following the law. The marshal handed her the document. As of this moment, this territory is under federal protection. No one can buy, sell, or develop this land without Apache approval. Winona's hands trembled as she took the paper. My father died for this, she whispered. My mother, my people, they all died for this. I know. The marshal's voice softened. What was done to them was a crime, and while I can't bring them back, I can make sure their sacrifice means something. Dakota grabbed Winona's shoulder. Sister, we won. We actually won. For a moment, Clara thought Winona might collapse, but she didn't. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and looked at the marshal with eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by life. Thank you, she said. On behalf of my people, thank you. The marshal nodded, then he turned to Clara. As for you, Mrs. McAllister, there will be an inquiry. People in Washington don't like civilians taking the law into their own hands. I understand. I'll do what I can. Given the circumstances, I expect you'll be cleared. He paused. But you might want to lay low for a while. Let things settle. Clara looked at Winona, at the other women, at the crowd still lingering in the square, reluctant to leave as if they were afraid the nightmare might return the moment they turned away. I think, Clara said slowly, I might have somewhere to be. A week later, Clara stood on the porch of her ranch, not alone anymore. Winona sat in a chair beside her, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. Inside, the other women were preparing dinner. Dakota arguing with Ayanna about seasoning. Kimi laughing at something Tala had said. Chenoa humming an Apache song their mother used to sing. The sound of family. Real family. What are you thinking about? Winona asked. Samuel. Do you miss him? Every day. Clara looked at her hands. The calluses from holding a gun. The scars from cutting ropes. But I think he'd be happy, knowing I'm not alone anymore. Winona was quiet for a moment. In my village there was a story. About a woman who lost everything, her husband, her children, her home. She wandered the desert alone for years, searching for a reason to keep living. What happened to her? She found a child, an orphan left behind after a raid. The woman took the child in, raised her as her own, and slowly, as she taught the child to walk, to speak, to fight, she remembered how to live. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. The story says that healing doesn't come from time. Winona continued. It comes from purpose, from having someone who needs you, someone to protect. Is that what we are, your purpose? No. Winona reached over and took Clara's hand. You're my family, and I'm yours. Clara squeezed back. They sat together in the fading light, two women from different worlds bound by loss and love and the refusal to let evil win. Inside, Kimi appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready. Dakota says if you don't come now, she's eating your portion. Winona laughed a real laugh, the first Clara had heard from her. "Tell Dakota if she touches my food, I'll make her regret it." "I'll tell her." Kimi grinned. "But I'm not getting in the middle of you two." She disappeared back inside. Winona stood offering her hand to Clara. "Ready?" Clara looked at the hand, at the woman offering it, at the house full of people who'd fought and bled and nearly died together. She took it. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." They walked inside together. The door closed behind them. Outside, the desert stretched endless and quiet, the same desert that had witnessed massacres and hangings and 20 years of terror. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, it felt different. It felt free. Somewhere out there, a coyote howled at the rising moon. The sound echoed across the mountains, across the plains, across a territory that was finally learning what justice meant. And in a small ranch house at the edge of the world, 7 women sat down to dinner, 6 Apache sisters, and 1 rancher's widow who'd become their 7th. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More challenges probably. More enemies. The world wouldn't change overnight just because 2 men had died. But they would face it together. And that made all the difference. Clara McAllister had lost her husband. She'd lost her quiet life. She'd lost the woman she used to be. But sitting at that table, surrounded by the family she'd found in the most unlikely place, she realized something. She hadn't lost everything. She'd gained something more. A purpose. A people. A home. And no force on earth would ever take that from her again. Some folks say that justice is blind, that it doesn't see color or creed, rich or poor. But Clara McAllister knew the truth. Justice isn't blind. Justice is a choice. A choice to stand up when everyone else sits down. A choice to fight when everyone else runs. A choice to believe that right matters more than might. She'd made that choice under a cottonwood tree, cutting down 6 strangers she had no reason to save. And in making that choice, she'd found everything she'd ever lost. Samuel would have understood. He'd always said that love wasn't about holding on. It was about letting go. Letting go of fear of doubt, of the small safe life that keeps you from becoming who you're meant to be. Clara had let go. And in the end, that's what saved her. Not the gun. Not the fight. The love. The love that made her cut those ropes. The love that made her ride back into danger. The love that made her stand in front of 500 people and demand justice for strangers who'd become family. That love was still there. Would always be there. And as long as it was Clara McAllister, would never be alone again. This is the story of a woman who found family in the ashes of tragedy. A woman who proved that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. A woman who showed the world that the strongest bonds aren't forged in blood, but in choice. In the end, that's all any of us have. The choice to be kind. The choice to be brave. The choice to stand with the fallen and help them rise. Clara McAllister made her choice. And it made all the difference.